Hi, Jason Hoddle here. My craft name is Fluffy. I'm a tarot reader, and I'm excited to work with you through tarot to help you discover the best possible version of yourself. Together, we can help you tell your story, and we could also project the story you desire into your future. I am a three-legged wolf. I lost my lower leg last year through an accident, but through that accident, I found my humor. And through humor, I found my magic. And through humor, I found love. Through humor, I've discovered all things are possible. So give me a call, text me, all over Facebook. Use the hashtag with the fluff through social media to track me down. Love ya. Bye.
Welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft. Tonight's episode is extra special to me because it's the first time I've had two guests on at the same time. We have Beverly Oberline. She's an author. She's a teacher and practitioner of tarot divination. She's also a Reiki master and teacher of Reiki as well. Ruth Souther is an author as well, and she also is a teacher of tarot, and she practices tarot divination. She's a hypnotist. She is also the creator of and writer of the book, Vega's Elemental Priestess Path. Tonight, we're going to be talking about Croning, so this should be a super interesting show. No further ado, let's welcome Beverly and Ruth. Okay. Welcome to another episode of Everyday Witchcraft, and today we have two returning guests that have actually been recently on the show. We started talking about, this is Ruth Souther and Beverly Oberline, and we started talking about Croning. And so we're going to learn about what a Croning is. What is a crone?
Sure. Hi, I'm Ruth Souther, and I have been in the priestess world for 30 some years. I've studied with Starhawk and reclaiming, and that's the style of ritual and work I do. My priestess path is reclaiming style. Bev, how about you?
I am Bev Oberline, and I am a student of Ruthie's as well as a friend. And she has, I've studied with her, probably 20 years now, tarot and Reiki. And I went through the first Croning session that she did. And then I became interested in it as well. And so we're hoping to collaborate on something here very shortly.
Okay, well, let's talk about it a little bit. First of all, what constitutes a crone?
Well, technically, if you read books, they'll say that you have to be a certain age, 58, 60, even older. And I don't believe that. I believe that people, women, move through these maiden mother crone at different points in their life. Some people have never had children. Some people, instinctively become mothers without that biological clock. But typically it's older women, because older women are not acknowledged in the society. We're pushed aside. Older men, ooh, they're awesome. Older women, not so much. So we look at it as an empowering step into your own self-authority to own your own strength.
Exactly. I think of it as, how long have you been in the craft? Because the different stages of the maiden mother crone, if you don't start your path until you're much older, to me, that doesn't constitute a crone. That's still, a baby, still maiden. Right. So what do you think about it, Beverly?
Well, what I found, especially, I didn't have kids by choice. And so when I reached the age of 52, I found myself to be without a significant relationship. The man that I'd had a long relationship with had passed. And I was kind of like, what now? I loved my work and I was ready to continue that, obviously, for some time, but I was looking for something else. And I'd kind of been, as I told you in my other interview, I'd been in the broom closet, as our friend Lynn says. I'd been just a solitary. Yeah, I don't think for a long time I even knew that I even classified myself as a witch necessarily, but I was practicing. And I knew that I was moving into a more earth-based spirituality. And then I began to talk to Ruth, and she went, where'd you go, North Carolina? And went through a Croning ceremony, and she started talking about it, and boy, my antenna just sprang up, and I said, oh, that's what I want. And the more we talked about it, the more I wanted to do it. And then kind of simultaneously, I let my hair go. I had always colored my hair. I've had gray hair since I was a kid. And so I had always colored it, and I let it grow out and just let it be white. And I noticed that I kind of became invisible. Like at the grocery store, I used to be able to wave down a stock boy because I'm short, hey, can you help me with that? I couldn't get anything. And I discovered that I was going to have to take up a little more room. I was going to have to, whether I did it magically or physically or whatever, I was going to have to take up more space, and I was going to have stronger energy. And so that was part of my moving into it. And it certainly has served me well, to learn to be able to just really to speak with my own authority. You reach that place, and Ruthie's right. You reach that place kind of organically. I have a young friend here in Florida. I have a couple of them. One's a mom, one is not. Both are ready to become crones. And they're young women, but they are like, I want to do this. I want to move into this area here, And so I don't know that they will, anytime soon, but mentally they get it, they're ready to do it.
Yeah.
So for me, it was really, it's, in a way, it's a coming of age.
Yeah, I believe it's definitely self-empowerment. And you're right. It seems like as in this society, the young, the youth, even the mothers, everybody focuses on that. No one focuses on the crone. Like you said, they just kind of fade off into the distance, when in reality, they play such an important part of this whole path. They're the teachers. They're the ones you go to for questions. They're the ones that show you, hey, you've got this, the encouragement, the power that's behind that. They've invested, and a lot of people forget about that.
The experience is a lot of it, so, inside, women may feel that they're ready to crone, or they're ready to do a different aspect of themselves, but it's really experience of life. And you brought up being a teacher, life experience. That's why the older women are generally the ones that are crone, because they're the ones who have had the experience of, especially in our path, doing ritual, doing support and meditations, and just life in general. So, and also I've known women who have done the croning ceremony, but then felt like they wanted to step back into exploring what the maiden was, or the mother was. Each one is so an important aspect, and we don't have to just stay in one place. And as our souls evolve, so some of the things that are out there, when we were getting ready to do this croning with Bev and two other women, there really wasn't much out there on it, believe it or not. You'd think there'd be all kinds. This was back in the 90s, I think, or early 2000s. Yeah, early 2000s. Yeah. I lose track of time. Yeah, into the 2000s. Yeah. So, well, yeah, maybe 2010, somewhere around in there. But so the red tint, that's one aspect. And that's when the women would always go shuffle off to a place where they would bleed into one hut, and so the red tint began to honor that part of first blood. These are major life passages, a lot of times in festivals and pagan events, you'll find things like that. But there is hardly anything for the individual to step in and claim their power. And so that's what we did. We we decided to change this from some mysterious passage at what date, at what age, for them to express outwardly who and what they were and why they wanted to step into this piece of being the wise woman in our groups.
Yeah.
Do you think that, you were talking about, and I completely agree with this, you're in the Croning stage, but you might want to revisit the maiden or the mother. Do you think it's possible, okay, you're in the maiden stage, to jump to crone? Because I would think you would have to have those experiences to be the crone. Like, you could step back and revisit, but not completely jump forward. What are your thoughts about that?
Excuse me.
I think that's true. I feel like a lot of people have studied and worked on themselves so hard that they think they're ready, but life experience is invaluable. So I don't think they can jump that far and that fast. I certainly at 30 couldn't have become a crone. I didn't know enough. And I was still really locked into my own traumas and life. And, I feel like there has to be a point where we move emotionally. And that's another part of what we did. We created, feeling the need to enter the shadow. I called it the darkness back then, but the shadow side of oneself, facing fears and shortcomings, that's not something that happens easily. And as a young person, they might be looking at that, but they certainly haven't worked through it, I don't think. A vow was required so that you're not just resting on your laurels. Okay, so looking at a mother or a maiden, and I've been through all three phases of that, I certainly couldn't have told you what my desires were.
Yeah, because you
at that
point
in my life,
and they change throughout the different years. They change. I always say, like I told my children, and it's different. It's not exact, but like every 10 years, you go through a huge major life change. You kind of rethink everything.
Like I said, I purposely chose not to have kids. One of the most valuable pieces of information I was given the night that we did the Croning ceremony was that you do not have to physically mother to be a mother. You don't have to physically give birth to another human. You can mother in any number of ways. You can mother your nieces and nephews. You can mother ideas. You can mother concepts. You can mother any manner of, magic, or you can mother a book out into publication. You can, there are all sorts of ways to think that. So yes, I agree. Still, you need the experience, but the experience may not be as it is so often narrowly delineated in our society.
Yeah.
It's not really biological.
Right.
It's not really a biological process in the magical world. It is the caretaker, it is the nurturer, the mother, the maiden is the spring ideas. I equate it back to the wheel, spring and summer and winter and all that sort of thing. And I think it really evolves into this. And
you have the life experiences. How does magic play a part in that? If somebody, say, was just a spiritual person and they've gone through all these different phases, didn't really realize that that's what they were doing, but have gone through these different phases, especially like through their spirituality, big thing, and they said, okay, I want to crone. Do they have to go back and go work as the maiden, work as the mother? I mean, they kind of have already, especially like with their spirituality, or can they just kind of jump in and go from there?
You ask a great question. And I want to point out that I've done croning for Catholic women, for Christian women, for Jewish women, for pagan women, because it's an honoring of where they are in their life. And no one cares when you reach a certain age with women. No one cares. So in answering that question, the magic is in their story. So every croning is tell your story. And so we set it up as a ritual. Even the women who came from other traditions were thrilled with it. And with Bev, what we went all out, man. Before the actual croning ceremony, we had set up 3 places. They came in, we had the archetypes, we had the maiden, and they had to visit the maiden. Remember that?
Oh, I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Go visit the maiden, bring a gift for the maiden, the mother, the crone, and we added the masculine archetype, the father, because without that integration of authority and power over ourselves, we had to bring that together. And so they had to go to each station in a certain room, and they were the people who were in that role were dressed that way. They had to tell their story to them. What made you the maiden? What made you the mother? What makes you the crone? What makes you with your archetypical masculine side? What did you do with that? That's the magic. And in we're absolutely pagan. And like I said, reclaiming style, which is both men and women. It's not limited to just the women group. And so it is honoring all that path. There is how we sparked. And then the magic was, of course, the archetypes that they talked to, because we did channeling, and each one of those people channeled that archetype, and it was funny, but it was also almost scary. Bev can speak into this because they were so in that role. And then we had to devoke it once we were done. So we created the magic. But when I did for the other women that were not of the pagan tradition, I had bowls of beads and water, and they would take the beads of what they wanted to release and drop it in the water as they told their story. Then they would go to the other one and claim it, and then also put it in water to release it, to call in the good. So even though they didn't know that they were doing a ritual, they definitely were. And then we crowned them, because crowning is important. A visible something visible for them to see. And with Bev and Dawn, I didn't do this with those women, but we washed their feet. We had them put their feet in water. We washed their feet. We did all of the traditional pagan pieces of honoring in those. And so there were 2 different rituals involved for those guys. We really pulled out all the stops for them.
We did. Well,
what was that like, Beverly?
Oh my gosh. It was because Ruth knew all of us personally. And so she did it at her house. And I walked into that house. I'm familiar with her house as I am with my own house. And I walked into that house and I was like, oh, okay. Because the pictures were covered with silk drapes, everything. There was not a reflective surface in the place. There sat a friend of ours in all of her dark, deep majesty. And I was like, is it okay to come in?
Like a little kid. May I enter?
Oh, okay. But it was truly amazing. And everybody that channeled, they were totally there, and especially the masculine aspect. I will tell you this was so funny. So I went into the little room where he was, and he asked me a couple of questions, and I said, I will try my very best. And he looked at me and he said, there is no try. There is no. And I was like, holy cow. I thought, if Yoda jumps out of that closet, I'm going out that window. It was terrific. And the thing that happened was that the girl who had aspected the maiden, when I left that night, she lived in a little area that was out in a rural area. And as I was going up what we call a hard road in Illinois, which is basically a 2-lane highway, there was a coyote walking down the side of the road. And he was just walking down. He was a big one, too, a big dog coyote. And he was walking down the road like, hey, I own this place. This is my space, and everybody just better get out of the way. He wasn't even remotely concerned about the cars. Usually they skitter away. And he was just walking right down that road. And as I went past him, I thought, that's a magical coyote. And so the girl who had aspected the maiden said, did anybody see that coyote? And I was like, saw the coyote. So it was just one of those things where, especially when we all get together with our energy, we could really pull it up. But I think that anybody, regardless of their tradition, who had walked into a scene like that, would certainly have felt the power and felt the magic and understood that this is bigger than all of us. That this energy that we tap into is the thing. It's just like we talked about when we did the other interview about the energy. You know, it's out there. It's that. And then I did a Croning class online last year, and we all made crowns.
What is the, oh, that's beautiful. Ah! Oh, I love it. That's really
Everybody made their own. I just sent them the bands and some stones and said, you know, tear up your old jewelry, do whatever you want to do, make your crown. It gives you strength, like I said, to stand in your own authority. You know, I don't have to. I have nothing to prove to anybody. You know, I speak my mind. I like it or don't. I don't care. I speak my mind. That's it. It freed me. It entirely freed me from whatever I may have thought, or somebody may have put me in a position or a box or a category or whatever. You know, all of that just dropped away. Ruthie snapped her fingers and it went away.
Well, it wasn't quite that easy, but you know, the elaborateness with which we did when Bev and Gail and Dawn were croned isn't easy to reproduce, especially like online. So Bev did a wonderful job online talking with these women and moving them into this place of empowered. And I think that is the definition of a crone. And that's why the crown, right, is because you are empowered. You become your own authority, and you are not limited by whatever beliefs or what you've been told. But one of the things I think is important to understand is that if a person has preparation, okay, I'm trying to say how I want to say that, think how I want to say this. So when we do it in a day, so usually when I do it now, it's like a workshop sort of almost, but it's over a period of several hours because we don't have the luxury of, you know, all the time that we spent back then doing all these different things. And they had been in the Priestess Path class with me. That's another thing. You know, they had been studying all of these pieces, wanting to do ritual. And so we wanted to create a ritual for them. And then at the end, that was just the preparation, all of meeting those archetypes. The actual ritual where we crowned them and washed their feet and blessed them with the sevenfold kiss was later. And it was a light, laughing, flowing, happy, energetic, because they had taken this shadow work already and done it. But in a one-day workshop, I give them things to do before they come to it. There's preparation. And so they can write it out. Depends on who the women are, you know. But here's what I want you to do before you even step in this door. So anybody out there who's thinking about doing a croning, of course, can get a hold of me or Bev. We'd be more than happy to talk through it with you. But plan it so that they have prepared, thinking about what they have done with their lives, what is in their heart, what is in their intention. What advice would you give younger women? You know, what encouragement? What's the balance? Where would you find peace? I mean, all of these questions are, where's your integrity? And it's funny how a lot of people can't answer those questions. That's why we don't do it in that day, because they need time to think. If you ask someone, you know, where do you find where's your integrity? What can you describe it? They're like,
I don't know.
Right. So I think that's an important step these days, especially if someone is wanting to do a ritual for people, to give them lots of prep work, if not even meeting with them a few times, or like Bev did online.
So at the end, I know you do a little thing that's online, but can they personally do something by themselves, like as far as a longer ceremony?
Yes, they really can. If a woman is willing, I would really recommend that you have someone as a witness, though. You can do it by yourself, but we talk to ourselves all the time about our anxieties and traumas and truths and joys, right? But it's very important to have a witness, someone who can stand there in silence, not offering help, not telling you yes, no, do this, do that, but just stand there and listen to your story. And then once you have told your story, have something, a piece of jewelry or something, a crown. You know, we do the crowns on purpose, that you Go to Claire's and buy a tiara, and step into it. And I like physical stepping into, like, your witness is standing here, literally step forward. I claim my crown. I claim the crone. I claim the role of the wise woman. Having someone hear you say that validates it. So sure, you can do all that yourself, but have a witness.
Does the witness have to be a certain age?
No. Witness can be any age at all. It doesn't matter. It can be a man, anybody who's willing to support and stand there and hold space for you, as we know. And speaking because of the pagan witchy world, cast your circle, call your elements in, call in whoever you want. We kept it more generic. We didn't call in a specific goddess or god, but you could, if you have a spirit guide, if you have a goddess you're working with, call them in, ask them to be present for you and be a witness from, that higher consciousness. But for sure, when you're in this world, do all of that first, and then don't forget to devoke, or you'll be walking around bouncing off the walls.
If throughout your life you do shadow work, when you are taking the class, or getting ready for that, going through that process, do you find that some discover shadows that they didn't even know they had?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because it you can have all the we both know this one. You can have all the outlines and all the plans that you want, and that old thing about humans make plans and the universe laughs. And that's exactly what happens, because these things develop organically. And so, you'll be rolling right along on your class schedule, and all of a sudden, whoop, and up come the stop signs. And it's like, obviously, somebody has an issue, and they may know it, or they may not even realize it. But it's like, okay, we're going to have to work over this. We're going to have to tread carefully over some of these rocks until we get to this place where, we can work through whatever this is. And so, it's you just have to be able to let it work organically, and then you have to respond in kind and offer a helping hand, or someone to hold space, or a guide, whatever is needed. And sometimes you just have to judge it at that moment.
I do a lot of shadow work in my own personal practice with hypnosis and with shamanic breath work. A lot of shadow comes out. In fact, we have in SHIP, Shamanic Healing Initiatory Process, we have one whole segment for a weekend called Shadow. And that's all we do, is dig into the shadow pieces. And as a hypnotherapist, the trauma is always there. It's just, I don't like saying everybody's in trauma, because that's not true. But we've all had things happen in our lives that we don't even realize have affected our patterns. In my priestess path, every segment we talk about the parts of us, whether it's in water or earth, what's your body image? What's your emotional truth? What have you been told? So we look at our patterns. We look at all of these things that we want to pull up in air. Communication. Where's your voice? Do you even have a voice? And so those are all pieces and aspects of being shadow work to step into ownership. If I can't talk and say my truth, that's shadow. If I can't embrace the feelings I have, because I was told as a kid, don't cry, that's shadow work. So it's there all the time.
What do you recommend for somebody that's just starting shadow work and they don't know where to start?
Find someone to help you with it, because there's a lot of modalities out there to work with shadow. But you can go completely out of your mind trying to work with it by yourself, because you need someone to help you sort out, where does this come from? Why is it there? We tend to want to blame our parents, and I don't think that's always true. Society, let's blame society. A lot of it's just simply ingrained in us. As a child, you might have seen something, heard something, and it became truth for you. And then it becomes your shadow, and you don't even know where it came from. Kids are very open and susceptible to a lot of things. So, shadow work in breath work. There's a lot of modalities with breath work. The priestess path deals with it. Hypnotherapy therapists deal with it. All of these modalities. And of course, you can always contact either one of us and we can guide you in some other paths. I like to know the story and the questions. I ask people, what's your fear? I think that's my first one is, what are you afraid of, really? And then that guides me to where their shadow is.
Next. And make a timeline is helpful, making a timeline of just from as far back as you can remember, not just of what could cause the shadows, but of the light too. And just make a timeline, a storyline. That's something that I do with my students, not in the beginning, but a little bit later. And I found that helpful. And I bet that would be helpful when doing that work as well.
Oh, I agree. And journaling. I mean, I don't like to journal myself because I like to work on the computer journaling, but whatever. Keeping track of that and looking at, and like really and truly, you're right. Shadow is just one aspect. What about all the joy? People forget. They don't look at the happiness, the joy, the light in their lives. So there has to be a balance. So we can look at these patterns. Sometimes these patterns create the joy. So there is a balance in there. And people come through with such deep anxiety. Let's let go of those fears and step into what is the empowering part of who you are. And that's reclaiming the authority over self. And that's where any of these, you can ritual maiden, a mother, and crone. And croning is what we're talking about. But I did you can do first blood. I've done that for 12, 13-year-olds. I've done coming of age for my 18-year-old daughter back in the day, which was interesting. We had all her friends. I had a representative. I was the mother, the maiden. She was the maiden and the crone. And we were recording it, and the camera shut off and refused to record this very personal and intimate thing that we did. Everybody gave her a charm and the advice. So you can do ritual for all aspects of the, and all of this wisdom was given to her from her young friends to her old friends. So ritualizing our lives is important. Celebrating, that's the thing, celebrating our lives. That's what all this is about.
And recognizing the different stages that you're in and what you've learned, what you can teach, what you want, different goals and things like that. I would think, this is the question for both of you. What is the most, empowering or that you got out of Croning? What is the biggest change? I know you felt, okay, free and stuff like that, but was there something else that was that you can share that was extremely personal, that you got out of that particular process that you can't say you got out of, being a maiden or being a mother?
Yeah. My mind was Ruthie can tell you that.
So I'm sorry, what did you say?
Who, me?
I didn't hear you.
I said my mind was liberated to begin with. You can attest to that.
Oh, yeah.
I think it liberated my heart and my soul. Really, truly. It liberated me. I always thought I was a nonconformist and I didn't pay any attention to rules and I don't care what you say and blah, 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 but we really do. Down deep, that's, as she said, it's ingrained from the time we're kids. And because we go to school and you have to follow the rules and you have to wear what they say and you have to do this. And even, when I started in business, you couldn't even wear pants to work. You couldn't even, not jeans, so you couldn't wear nice slacks to work. You had to freeze to death to walk to work in your miniskirt. And so there just is a lot of weight associated with that. And I think that that's what it finally did, I finally freed, Ruthie helped me free myself from all of that. And that I do not carry that baggage any longer. It's not mine, somebody else's.
When
I went through the Croning, it was very disappointing. And I did not feel anything. It was a whole group of women. We all dressed in our finery. We were out in North Carolina. And what it did for me was made me come home and create my own. And because I was just like, this can't be it. So we're all going to stand up, we're going to say our name, and we're going to claim something. And that's it. There was no personal piece to it or anything. And so what I got out of supporting and being service to other women who came into this, it liberated me. It gave me insights. So, and I had written this in this old paper here about how all the facilitators stepped into a role that we had not really felt before. And that was my Croning too, even though I didn't do it the same way. But so it can be a disappointing one if you don't have any personal piece in it. Just a mass.
Like you said, you don't always have time to do the way that we did mine. But Dawn and Gail and I were also friends, and we got together at least once a week and did a little ritual of our own, maybe working on a particular thing, asking for answers, asking for guidance, whatever. And then we would journal, and we would spend 2 or 3 hours a week with each other doing this. So, there was not only a deep connection between all of us and Ruth, but we did do a lot of that. So she's absolutely right. And the women that I had in my class here are women that I knew, the women that I knew locally, women, most of whom I call friend. And so we had talked about, I just kind of floated the idea, hey, what do you guys think? You want to do this? And they're like, yeah. And so then we began to speak into what we wanted and how we wanted to do it. And I think that's, Ruth's right. It's very important. You can't, it's just flat and one dimensional to just walk up and say, well, I don't know what, if you said to me, claim something, I'd be like, well, what are we talking about here? I know I have 94 things I can claim, but which one? Yeah.
It's just like going through, your year and a day through the different initiations. You can go the year and a day, but if you haven't done the work behind it, why are you claiming that first degree? You haven't done the work behind it, and I think that gets lost. Everybody wants to get that year and a day. It may take you 2 years. It may take you 3 years. You need to go through the work and the process and the experience to become what that first degree actually is. And I would think that as far as Croning, it's the same thing. Okay, I'm a certain age. Okay, now I can be a crone. If you haven't done the work behind it, what are you going to represent? What do you think other responsibilities of a crone is?
Well, I think it is being in leadership, the willingness to be in service, to support and understand, find compassion. For me, as I've moved through these stages and I'm in this part of my life, it is becoming more compassionate and understanding. I can hear, I used to be more radical and more angry even about things, but now I'm more willing to listen to both sides. And I think, so a mediator is the word I'm trying to find. I think a crone steps into that role, or we tried to think of a common word for a male who would step into this role, and we couldn't. Elder. I mean, there is no other word that is comprehensive for the men. And that's kind of sad, really. But it is being able to stand in your power and offer wisdom out when it's asked for, not when someone is just like, oh, hey, let me tell you how you should be. And some of the words like should, would, let me tell you what I think. I mean, all those little buzzwords should be erased from our I know, because that implies I know more than you do. And I might, but if I can offer it in a way you can hear it, and support you and be in service. And I think that's it, being in service to the greater good. When you're walking the path, right? You're talking the talk. You are living who you are. And when people ask me questions about paganism or witchiness or any of those aspects, it's like, I live that. That is my life. It is not a belief. It is not could be a religion, but it is me. It is what I do. And I embrace that as a life path. And I think that's what you're saying, is that if you don't take that seriously and live that, then it's fake and superficial, and nobody's going to listen to you do any. I wanted to go back to when you're talking about the year and a day. In the tradition I grew up in, basically, there wasn't those initiations, so to speak. There were, but they weren't exactly in the first initiation and all that. But I think a year and a day, if someone's willing to work with a person, a year and a day is a good time. Work through it each month, each season, each wheel, each aspect of the wheel, 8 different times. Look at each season and follow through on both the light and the dark, and begin that integrating process. So I would say that anybody listening to this who wants to set off on this path of Croning or exploring maiden or mother or some other aspect, take a year and a day, take a year, and then on that next day, step into it. Yeah. I think that's good.
But do the work. Do the work behind it, because you can just go through. I've had students that, I've done this for 2 years now and I've not been initiated yet. Yeah, but you haven't done the work behind it. You've been involved periodically here and there, but you haven't done the work behind it, because it's not the timeline. It is what you've accomplished during that year, to be able to take that step.
Exactly. And I have a question for you. Do you tell them straight up what it is, why they aren't being initiated?
Yeah, I do. I make sure that it's very clear in the beginning that the year and a day is that's the soonest, but that's just a guesstimate, essentially. When you're ready, you're ready. And each initiation, each stage is different. Is different. Like the first stage is kind of learning, seeking, figuring things out, exploring different things, and then by the second initiation, it's living the life. If you're not living and it kind of happens automatically as you're going through the first, studying for the first year, it sort of starts to happen, or it's supposed to automatically. You implement the things that you're learning into your daily life. So by the time you're working on your second degree, you're already living that without even realizing, and then going into the third is more of teaching and taking somebody under your wing. And that, but it all happens naturally if you're doing the work. And if you're not doing the work, you can tell that it's not happening and they're not ready. It's not just knowledge. Okay. I know the colors. I know what they mean. I know how to call elements. I know this. It's not just that. It is actually phases that you're going through. So everybody's different, and there's nothing wrong with taking a couple of years. It's just sometimes that's just the way it is, where you may not have the time to put into it. But like I said, that first year is exploring and learning the different basics and things like that. But as they start evolving, I guess would be the word, you can tell when they're ready for that next stage. And I would think with pruning, it's kind of the same. It may take you longer, depending on how hard it is. Some people have never done shadow work, and that might be their first time.
I agree. There are people who come to this late in life. I was in my 30s before. I had already embraced what paganism was, but I didn't know what it was called. This was back in the 70s. I came from a small town. I didn't know there was words for this. So I was into my late 30s before I stumbled into a group of women who were witches and did all of this, ceremony and all of that. And at that point, I'm like, what? There's a name for this? Well, I had to go through a lot. It took me a lot longer than 1 year. It took me several years to even understand the concepts of what I was asking for and releasing and embracing. And I think that happens. Another reason for Croning is because in our society, women and men, maybe not as much, but women, when they reach a certain age, are undesirable. Other old people are. Other societies, they embrace their elders. Mm-hmm. For some reason, we don't. Okay, whatever that's about. But I think that's that evolution. You may be age-wise the crone, but you're not emotionally in that place to become that person you're talking about. So it could take 3 years to hit that mark, no matter what your age is. So it's an evolution, as you said. It's an evolution of your soul. And as you work your way through it, it becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of your path and you evolve. I call myself earth-based now. I used to be Wiccan and then this and then that. And I have spiritually woven my own identity. And I think that's the basis of what I teach. How do you weave your own spirituality into it? Your truth.
Your truth. Exactly. And everybody is different. One of the things I also do with anyone, not just students, but anyone that comes to me that especially starts off, is I have them write their belief system detailed. I don't read it. It's their own personal. It's like the beginning of their journal, actually. But they write their belief system exactly detailed what they believe in all different ways, in all different aspects of their life. And then after a year and a day, not after they get initiated, but after a year, every year and a day, they rewrite it and see how it evolves because it constantly changes. I found some old journals that I had from years ago, and I was just shaking my head going, wow. I mean, it's just changed so much. And I still do it. I'm not gonna lie, I don't do it every year now, but I do it every couple of years. And I'm at a big shift right now again.
I love that idea. Writing all that down, what you believe, and then not looking at it for a year. Because you look at it, you're like, who was that person? I don't even know who that was.
Yeah, especially if you're actively studying and, and even if you're not active, just life, change. And you're not allowed to look at it. You seal it up in an envelope, can't peek until you've written your next one. And then if you want to reflect back on it, that's fine. But you have to write the next stage first, and then because you can't cheat.
Oh, good point. They can't look at it. They have to write it first, and then they can look at it. That's a good idea. Because they won't know if what they've evolved to. If they go look at what they've written, they will just riff off of that, right?
Yeah,
that's a great idea. I love that.
Yeah, I love.
I think when you've done your work and the path that you've been on for so many years, it just becomes nature. I don't have to write down a lot of things anymore, just simply because it's there. And knowing that it's there and knowing that I'm evolving, I can feel it when I'm starting to change my thoughts around something, so I think that's part of embracing the path, that we are opening ourselves to evolution and recognizing it happens.
And it's constant. And you touched on something about how, older women are just kind of shunned aside in our society. And I don't know why. I don't know when that happened. Because in so many other worlds, they are embraced and they're looked up to. What do you think about that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that? It's just.
Well, we have such a focus on youth, to be young is everything. And we're constantly fed that. So I think a lot of that really does come from subliminally from advertising and from all of that. I mean, I remember when I was in airline school, Continental's advertising slogan was the proud bird with a golden tail. Really? It's all just sexuality and it's all you have to be beautiful in order to be that. You have to be young and and physically well, and you have to be able to do all these marvelous sports and wonderful things, and that's great for a healthy lifestyle, but that's not how it's projected. It's projected that that's the only way you're desirable, and we don't listen. And I think also too, the way we live now, Ruth and I both grew up in little towns. Where I lived, from our house, I knew everybody for 3 streets, every single home. Some of them had kids, some of them didn't, some of them were grandkids of kids that I knew, but there was always someone. And we always complained because we couldn't get away with anything because there was always somebody we knew who was watching. But, but the other thing was that those older people were always around us. If we did fall on our bikes and scrape our knee, I knew I could go to Kurt's grandma. She was right there. Debbie's grandma was right next door. Casey's mom lived there, and then we lived here. So there was always some place that you could go if you needed help. And in the process of having all those older people around us and part of our little group, then we heard those stories. We heard the stories about people who came up in the Depression. We heard the stories about, World War II. Well, I was born in 1950. World War II was only over for 5 years when I was born. We heard all that stuff. We got all that stuff. And so it's part of me and it's part of my history. And living the way that we do now, too often we take the older people and say, well, here, you go over here to an old folks home, and we just park them there and leave them, where they used to really a vibrant part of the home life, because nobody needed daycare when I was a kid. Of course, not everybody didn't have to work 4 jobs either, but there was grandma or grandpa or uncle so-and-so or aunt such and such. There was always somebody. If they weren't in the home, they were next door. They were 2 doors down. They were in, back there behind the fence, wherever. But they were a part, and it seems like that's sort of fractured just by physical boundaries, from what it used to be.
Yeah. Then it used to be that grandma could stay at home, and even as she got really a lot older, there was somebody there to help care for her, and she served a purpose. Everybody had a kind of like a purpose. And I'm very old fashioned, but I'm 100, obviously, I believe women should work. I work all the time. I'm 100% on board for that. But there was just more of a structure as far as family was concerned. So like you said, kids didn't really have to go to daycare. Grandma and grandpa weren't sent to an old folks home. And unfortunately now in society, it kind of almost has to be that way. Everybody's working all the time and life is so fast, especially with the internet and technology. And now there's AI. Oh my God, I don't even want to go down that road. But so it's completely different. I just moved into a house recently, and I just found out I have a neighbor that's like right through the woods. There's a little path and everything. She's 92 years old, and I cannot wait to take some tea over there. I guess the previous renter here used to go over there and visit with her. And so she told my other neighbor, we kind of live in the middle of nowhere, but there are kind of farther neighbors. But he mentioned that to me, and I said, oh, I wonder if she would want me to go over there and hang out. He said, yes, definitely. He was asking, or she was asking. So I'm excited about it because 93 years old, I can't wait to hear what she has to say, Yeah,
I agree with all of that. And in other cultures, they're multi-generational, living in the same house. And so there's always the matriarch. And I don't know that we've ever really had matriarchal in this country. Native American, some of them are matriarchal, some of them aren't. But I feel like women never had a place in this country anyway. You weren't supposed to work. We didn't even get to vote until 100 years ago. So in this society, particularly, women were not valued. They were thought of as objects and pushed aside. And so even as younger women, and I agree with Bev, all the advertising from the 70s on up, or even before that, red lipstick and, oh, you got to be sexy and you got to be this and that. But I don't think that women were ever taken seriously in this country. And it was the powerhouses of women who had the guts to go in there and break the glass ceiling that finally started drawing in the energy for the rest of us. I know Bev and I both, and maybe you too, I don't know, we're probably a lot older than you, but, I remember the women's movement. I was part of that. Even though I was in a small town, I was part of that and totally embraced women's lib, and it's still to this day misunderstood. To this day, 2023, people still don't know what women's lib was about, and it pisses me off. And younger women, not to harp on younger women, but many of them have no idea how we got where we are. They do not know. Exactly. And then they're backpedaling, and I'm like, don't do that. Don't
do it. Yeah, don't go backwards. I learned this that in the 70s, women were not allowed to have a checking account without the, I don't know, I guess permission, or he had to be on with their husband. So if you were single, You weren't allowed to have a checking account. One of the reasons why women got married is because they had more rights when they got married.
Isn't that nuts? It's just
That's-
nuts, is what that is. It
Yeah.
is so nuts. And I was just reading an article, which is current, not from back then, that women and their physical health that are dismissed over and over. And Bev probably knows this as well because of her work. They're dismissed, and, you know, serious illnesses and not taken seriously. Oh, you know, it's just your period, or you're just PMSing, or you're just whatever. Come to find out you've got something serious. And damn, that pisses me off when I think about it.
My friend whose sister died in her 40s of a heart attack because the ER kept saying, well, you just have indigestion. Now, if a man came in there at that age and said, I think I have indigestion, they'd slap an EKG on him and run him right back to the cath lab, you know. But no, they kept her there, and she was there a good long time. I want to say she was there 24, 36 hours and finally succumbed to her heart attack, which she had been having the whole stinking time. But she's a woman.
Yeah, so it's different. Well, even in the 70s, okay, so it was a video that I was watching of big changes that women had in society in the 70s. So another thing was insurance. Medical insurance was more expensive for women because women kind of took care of themselves. Like, they went to doctors a lot more often than, you know, men are like, oh, I cut my finger off, I'll just duct tape it back on. You know, they don't, that's just the way most men are still to this day. So because they didn't go as often for, you know, self-care, you know, taking care of their health, women's insurance was a lot more expensive.
Oh, it was also because it was discriminatory. It was more expensive, and women went more often because women were having babies. And I worked for 10 years in an OB-GYN clinic, trust me. We have fought insurance backward and forward over this stuff. But yeah, and I remember going for job interviews in the early 70s. And the first question out of somebody's mouth, my husband and I were married. He had 2 kids from a previous marriage. We didn't want any kids. And they're like, now you're sure, are you going to have any kids? Because the last 3 people have come in here and we've trained them, and then they've gotten pregnant and left. And I'm like, I'm not having kids. I'm not interested. And they're like, are you sure? Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
And they could even fire you for it. And the pill, you weren't allowed to be on the pill unless, or any kind of contraceptive, unless you were married, and it was for like control of how many children you were having. If you were single, no pill for you, no contraception for you.
So sorry.
I remember that. Oh, yeah. I was just going to say that too, about, you know, contraceptives. And I mean, there's so many things that, you know, and now we're backing up.
We're back to that, unfortunately.
I mean, when Roe versus Wade, this is a whole nother subject, but when that went down, all women were in mourning. All the women who supported that were in mourning. You know, it's a choice. And I don't know how we got here. How did we get here after 50 years of feeling liberated, and now we're not? And so taking it back to the crone, this is when women step into their power and say, no more. Nothing tickles me more than seeing older women out there with their signs throwing a fit.
I can't believe I have to protest this again.
Right.
Right. Or this is my sign from the 70s, you know.
Right. Right.
That would be so, dress up like you did in the 70s.
Right.
That would be fun. That would be fun. I'd be on board with that.
Right.
Marching for the ERA, and I was with a friend, and she had a son who was about 8, and she was going to get a babysitter, and then she called me and she said, you know, he wants to come along. And I was like, well, bring him along, you know, he can walk a mile and a half, you know. And she said he wants to make his own sign. And I said, yeah. And she said he's already working on it. And so he wouldn't show it to her until the day we got there. And we all remember Ruthie, we all gathered there at Isles Park on 5th Street. And didn't know you then, didn't know Peggy then, didn't know anybody then. And there was her son, and he held up this sign, and he made this sign that said, please pass the ERA so my mom can make more money.
Aww.
8 years old.
That's sweet.
And he now, as a 40-some-year-old male, is one of the finest feminists I know.
And being the crone, you know, because going through life, you're doing your thing, and you may believe one way and go and stand up for power for women, but it gets put on the wayside just in life. But stepping into that crone stage, you're remembering, hold on a minute here. How did we get from here to here? Like you just said, why are we going backward a little bit? No, we need to stand up together and just, and the great part is, I don't know if you have more time. I guess maybe you work a lot, but it's in different paths of work. But you sit back because you're looking back on your life and you're like, wait a minute. I need to stand, somebody better stand up. So I need to stand up. And like you said, you get more empowered. You feel that empowerment, that freedom, and you can go back to those feelings that you had when you were younger, that sense of freedom. And I'm going to fight for this. It's kind of like you've been reborn.
Yeah.
I agree. It is a rebirth, actually. It really is. And I think that the more women who go through that story and looking at all the reasons why they weren't able to claim their power is just profound to watch their faces light up when they realize that they can and they will. And I've known different women who, maybe they had troubles in their marriage, but when they changed, the marriage changed. And all it took was their shift to shift this whole dynamic with their husband or their wife. And it empowered other people, not just them.
Right. Yeah.
Two more things. First of all, what are your final thoughts for the whole Croning process? I'd like to hear from both of you. And then I have one more question for you.
Go ahead, Bev.
Well, I just say celebrate it. Ruthie's comment, she said 2 or 3 times about stepping into it. That's really important. If you do this by yourself with a witness, whatever, what I told my girls since we were online was to pull it up like a cloak, pull it over your shoulders like a mantle, and square your shoulders back and raise your chin up and step into it, own it, but celebrate it. Celebrate your journey. Celebrate who you've become. Celebrate all the things that you've seen and done, good, bad, and different. Celebrate it all, because it's all part of what made you who you are right now. And you're only going to get better. You're only going to go further. You're only going to experience more things. Some may be good, some may be not so good, but you've got this. So just grab a hold of it and do it.
I think it's a validation of a life well lived. No matter what has been in your life, let's validate it and celebrate it. And that, I think, is the whole point personally, so that you can become of service to yourself. My priestess path, that's what I say. You have to be in service to yourself before you can be service to anybody else, like putting that seatbelt on. And so let's validate the things you've been through. Let's celebrate them. Let's give you a place to speak and be authentic.
On the show again. And you guys are a wealth of information, so just be prepared. I'm going to be bugging you.
We know a lot because we're crones.
Right. Because you're crones. That's right. Well, once again, thank you, and blessed be.
Blessed be. Thank you. Okay. And so to get started in a path of croning, I think that you need to honor the elements. Start with your body, start with earth. Where do your feet walk? What is your path that you're currently on? Take a big look at how you live physically in this world, and then move into, I call it an unwinding. We cast a circle one way, unwinding, okay, Widdershins, but unwinding emotionally. What is it? So then work with water and work with the emotional truth. What is really your truth? What is not your truth? Then move into fire. What inspires you? What creativity? What have you put on the back burner that you've always wanted to do, and you've always been the one who gave up that dream for other people? So start looking into that fiery self, and then step into air. And air is about speaking your truth, but going through that entire motion of who am I? Why am I? What do I really want? And being able to speak into it. Those are the things I would begin doing, and do it physically. Sit with your water in a moonlit night and burn something and stare into the flames, even if it's a candle. Stand out in the wind and feel it and let it blow through you. That's what I would start with. And so I have a website. It is vegaspath.com, VEGAS path.com. I'm also on Facebook under Vegas Path and also under Ruth Souther. You can certainly friend me on there personally as well. I am really out of the closet. Everybody knows what I do. So no secrets here. And I teach a priestess path. I'm a hypnotherapist. I do Reiki. I do I do shamanic work. I do all kinds of things because every step I've taken, and that's another thing I think you can do. What is it you want to explore? Have you always had an interest in the gene keys? Do you want to know more about tarot? I mean, I teach tarot. I teach astrology. What do you desire? What do you want to learn? Step out there and take hold of it and learn it. That's my best advice.
Perfect.
And my email. My email.
Email.
Ruth Souther. Ruth Souther, my name, 52@gmail.com. Feel free to email me with any questions.
Great, thank you.
Hi,
Okay.
my name is Beverly Oberline, and in getting started with the Croning, I'm a big fan of journaling. And so I find often that I journal on the computer because my wrists are shot, but when I hand wrote, and as I journal on the computer as well, what I find is that when I get into that space, when I just put my hands on the keys and let it roll, let it come from out of my heart, out of my brain, into my fingers, I often will type things and think, where did that come from? I didn't even know that was in there. So I think that's something that's really important to start looking at. Where am I? Where am I now? Where am I in my life? And where do I want to be? And who do I want to be? And how do I want to be? And in what way do I want to act? Do I want to offer wisdom and teaching? Do I want to offer healing? Do I want to offer any kind of service to my community? Do I want to volunteer someplace? What do I want to do? And begin to really ask those questions of yourself and write them down. And I think that you will find some very surprising answers, but some answers that are full of wisdom and insight and great power in terms of determining your path and the way that you want to go forward into this. Because there are as many ways in, as there are things that we can think up. So that would be my advice. And so,
get in touch with you?
I'm sorry.
How can people get in touch with you?
You can find me at Wolf Spirit Energy on Facebook. My email is WOLFWMN14, Wolfwoman14, @gmail.com. And my phone is 239-940-1404. And I'm a Holy Fire Karuna Reiki master. I do distant Reiki as well as in-person Reiki. Tarot the same way. I do other energy healing. I occasionally have some classes online. I teach tarot. Like I said, I've done a Croning class. So, and I'm like Ruth. I'm open. I'm out of the closet. Everybody knows who I am and what I do. And so just, get a hold of me anytime that you feel so moved.
Well, thank you.
Could I add one more thing to a possibility of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Bev, of something they can do to work on this Crone path. Find an archetype that you resonate with. A goddess generally is what I recommend. Find a goddess that you can really work with for a year and a day and really delve into why does that goddess resonate with you, or God? I mean, it doesn't matter, but an archetype, why does it resonate? What are the lessons you can learn? How can you grow with the understanding? And I mean, build an altar, create a space where you can sit in front of it and really commune with that higher consciousness of that archetype. I found that extremely powerful, and I did that for years. I still do it. So you get a lot of gifts from that. And I think as a crone, learning to hear and listen to that archetypical energy is important.
Maybe even have a Croning altar, where you can sit and get inspired and tap into that particular energy, honor your life in the different things you've done, put memories up on it. That might be something that someone could do.
I agree. That's beautiful. Yeah, a crone altar. Yeah, I'm writing that down.
And I forgot that we did that with the goddesses, and the reason that I forgot is not because I'm not in touch, but because she's such a part of me that I don't think about that's where that really started.
Well, that's beautiful. Y'all are such a wealth of information. I love it. So, yeah, we'll definitely have you both back on. This was a lot of fun. This is my first show with multiple people, so I liked it. It was lots of fun. But I will see you next time, and thank you again, both Ruth and Beverly, for being on here. And blessed be.
Thank you so much. Blessed be.
Thank you. Blessed be.